That is the kind of woman Colleen Ashford was. The kind who loved so fiercely, so completely, she forgot to save herself first. But here is what makes her story different from every other survival story you've ever heard. While Colleen lay trapped in the freezing dark, fighting for 2 lives, her husband wasn't out searching for her. He wasn't calling for help. He wasn't on his way. He was in a hotel room, 200 miles away, with another woman. And the man who would risk everything to save her? The man who would lose 2 fingers clawing her out of that frozen grave? Was the one person her husband hated most in the entire world. Stay with me. Because what happens next will change the way you look at love, at loyalty, and at the dangerous thing that happens when a good woman finally stops making excuses. Colleen Ashford was 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, and standing at the window of a mountain lodge suite watching snow fall like a curtain over the world. From the outside, her life looked like a fairy tale. A tech millionaire husband. A penthouse in the city. A weekend anniversary getaway at the stunning Ridgecrest Mountain Lodge, where even the fireplaces were made of imported stone. But fairy tales, she was learning, have teeth. Her hand rested on her belly. Inside, her daughter shifted, a small, secret greeting, and Colleen smiled despite herself. "Happy anniversary to us," she whispered. 5 years. Can you believe it? The baby kicked in response. Colleen took that as a yes. Then her phone buzzed. The text was from Garrett. Garrett Ashford, CEO, charmer, the man who had proposed with a $300,000 ring on a yacht at sunset in front of photographers he had accidentally arranged. Emergency with the Sinclair deal. Have to fly back. Driver will pick you up tomorrow morning. Order room service. Love you. Colleen read it 4 times. She tried typing back, "It's our anniversary trip." She deleted it. The roads might close. Delete. Please don't leave me here alone. Delete. She sent 2 words instead, "Okay. Be safe." She pressed send. Then she sat down on the edge of the bed, in the most expensive suite she had ever stayed in, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Utterly, entirely alone. The lodge manager, Ruth, found her in the lobby, a silver-haired woman with kind eyes and the particular expression of someone who had seen this exact scene before. "Mrs. Ashford, is everything all right? My husband had a work emergency. He had to leave." Something flickered across Ruth's face. Not quite pity. Not quite surprise. Something quieter. Something that made Colleen's chest tighten in a way she didn't fully understand. She ate dinner alone at a table by the window. Outside, the snow was thickening, and an avalanche warning scrolled silently across the television mounted above the bar. The young waiter was friendly, chatty, the kind of boy who filled silences with small talk. Most people cleared out before the storm. Smart ones. He refilled her tea. Told her about a big group the night before, a tech conference after-party, apparently wild. One man had stood out. $5,000 jacket. Left with a brunette who was definitely not his wife. She kept calling him G, like they were in a movie or something. Colleen's cup stopped halfway to her lips. G. Garrett's nickname. The only people who knew him before the money, before the empire, before the carefully constructed image, only they still used it. "You okay? You look pale." "Fine. Just heartburn. Pregnancy thing." The lie tasted like something burning. She should have gone to bed. She knew that. She was pregnant, tired, and already emotionally hollowed out by an anniversary that had become an absence. But Garrett had left his laptop on the desk. She tried their wedding date first. Wrong. His mother's birthday. Wrong. His own. Wrong. Then, on instinct, she tried the date of his first $1 million deal, the day he became someone he was proud of. The screen unlocked. Later, Colleen would think about that. How easily the lie had come apart. How the very password that opened his private world was a monument to his ego. The inbox was neat. Organized. Garrett was meticulous about everything. But there was one folder simply labeled, B. She opened it. The first email was from a woman named Brinley Vance, VP of Operations at Ashford Tech. Colleen hadn't known her name until this moment. She had been a face in a boardroom photo, nothing more. Last night was incredible. Can't wait for the lodge. Should I book my usual room, or will you make an excuse to share yours? Garrett's reply was underneath, sent 2 days ago, while Colleen was packing her suitcase for their romantic getaway. Colleen's coming this time. We'll have to be careful. But after the baby comes, we'll figure everything out. I promise. Colleen scrolled. She kept scrolling. 18 months of emails. Intimate. Detailed. Planned. A whole relationship, hidden in a folder named after its participant. And then she found the one that broke her clean through. A subject line that read, "Room confirmed at the Aspen Grand." Brinley had written, "Can't wait to celebrate our anniversary." Yes, I know it's technically yours and Colleen's. That makes it better. The screen blurred. Tears, or shock, or both, Colleen couldn't tell anymore. This trip was never for her. This anniversary weekend was always meant for them, for Garrett and Brinley, their celebration. Colleen's pregnancy complications had forced him to include her at the last minute. She was the inconvenience. The obstacle. The pregnant wife who ruined everything simply by existing in her own marriage. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't hormonal. She wasn't crazy. She had always been right. She found his name almost by accident, searching Garrett's emails for anything else she might have missed. Weston Caldwell. Garrett had ranted about him for years. His greatest rival. A billionaire, worth $3 billion to Garrett's $40 million, which infuriated her husband in a way that went beyond business. It was personal. Visceral. The kind of hatred that only exists when someone makes you feel small. The search returned dozens of results. Most were business, lost deals, angry board memos, desperate strategies. But one email thread stopped her cold. Subject line, Caldwell's situation handled. Sent 18 months ago, right around the time Garrett began seeing Brinley. Catherine Caldwell's mental health history is all over the press. Weston is distracted. The Davidson contract is ours. Colleen searched further. Found news articles, blog posts, the kind of social media pile-on that only happens when a private person is suddenly made very, very public. The story emerged, piece by piece. Catherine Caldwell had been 7 months pregnant. She had struggled with postpartum depression after a previous pregnancy, something she and Weston had dealt with privately, recovered from, moved past. Something no one else was ever supposed to know. But someone had leaked her medical records. Framed her past as instability. Implied that Weston Caldwell was hiding a mentally unfit wife from his investors. The headlines were brutal. Catherine saw every one of them. The stress triggered early labor. The baby survived. Catherine did not. Colleen closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to press them flat against her thighs to make them stop. She had been married to this man for 5 years. She had slept beside him. Carried his child. Defended him when other people raised an eyebrow. Made excuses every time a small doubt flickered in the back of her mind. What else don't I know? What else has he done? Garrett's name lit up her phone screen. She stared at it for a long moment, at his wedding photo, both of them smiling, both of them lying, then answered. Honey. His voice was warm. Worried. The perfect performance. I'm so sorry about leaving. The deal fell through completely. I'm trying to get back but the weather is impossible. Where are you? Denver, he said. Stuck at the airport. The Denver airport is closed. A pause. Longer this time. I know about Brinley. She kept her voice completely flat. The kind of calm that only comes when all the fear has finally burned away and left pure, cold clarity in its place. I read your emails. All of them. I know this trip was supposed to be for her. I know you've been planning to leave after the baby comes. I know about Catherine Caldwell. I know all of it. The mask dropped. She could hear it, the shift in his voice from concerned husband to something colder, harder, something she now recognized as who he had always been underneath. Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. Brinley understands me. She doesn't nag. She doesn't need constant reassurance. She doesn't trap me with a pregnancy I never wanted. Each word was precisely placed. Surgically aimed. You said you wanted a family, Colleen whispered. I said what you needed to hear. That's what marriage is, saying what the other person needs to hear to keep them compliant. Compliant. Like she was an employee. A subordinate. A problem to manage. Catherine Caldwell died, Garrett. She left a baby without a mother. Collateral damage. Her husband was in my way. I removed the obstacle. The fact that she couldn't handle a little public scrutiny isn't my fault. He said it without flinching. Without hesitation. As if he were discussing a quarterly report. And then he made his final move. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to calm down. You're going to remember you signed a prenup. You're going to remember I have lawyers who specialize in destroying people in court. And you're going to accept whatever terms I offer when this baby is born. And if I don't? Then I'll do to you what I did to Catherine Caldwell. Only worse. Courts love giving custody to wealthy, stable fathers instead of hysterical, vindictive mothers. She opened her mouth to respond. And then the world ended. The sound came first. A roar, low and enormous, like the mountain itself had decided it was done being still. The floor shuddered. Glass shattered somewhere nearby. Colleen ran to the window, saw the white wall descending from the peak, massive and unhurried, the way natural disasters always look right before they take everything. The avalanche hit before she could scream. The impact threw her backward. The window exploded inward. Cold rushed through the suite like a living thing, like something that had waited all night for this moment. She was falling. Tumbling. The phone flew from her hand. Then darkness. Cold. Silence. Except for one sound, faint, tiny, coming from the phone somewhere in the wreckage. Garrett's voice. Still talking. Still threatening. Still unaware. Colleen? What was that noise? Colleen, answer me. Colleen. But Colleen could not answer. Colleen was buried in the snow. Welcome back. When we left Colleen Ashford, she was trapped beneath the snow of a collapsed mountain lodge, 7 months pregnant, freezing, and completely alone. Her husband was 200 miles away with his mistress. The phone had flown from her hand. No one was coming. But something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would teach Colleen, and all of us, what it truly means to be saved. The cold was absolute. Not cold like winter. Cold like what comes after. Cold that moves through skin and muscle and bone until nothing else exists, until the concept of warmth becomes something you can barely remember, like a word in a language you once spoke fluently. Colleen clawed upward. Or what she hoped was upward. Snow filled her mouth. Ice scraped her fingers raw. Her lungs screamed. She broke through the surface and gasped. The air tasted like survival, sharp and cold and impossibly precious. But her left leg was trapped. The snow had already hardened around her knee, tightening like concrete, like something that had decided she was staying. Help. The word came out barely above a whisper. Shock had stolen her voice. The cold had stolen everything else. Someone help me. Around her, the lodge was in chaos. The east wing had collapsed entirely. Smoke rose against the white sky from somewhere she couldn't see. People were screaming, running, digging through rubble with bare bleeding hands. No one was coming for her. No one knew she was here. She thought, this is how I die. Alone. Abandoned. Buried in snow while my husband threatens me over the phone. But the baby kicked. Hard. Almost angry. And Colleen screamed. She put every ounce of remaining strength into it, every shred of love she had for the child inside her, and screamed into the white silence until her throat burned. Footsteps. A figure moving through the debris. Careful. Purposeful. Mrs. Ashford. The voice was calm. Familiar. She had heard it only hours ago in the dining room. Weston Caldwell's face appeared above her, blood running from a cut on his forehead, his expensive coat torn open at the shoulder, his eyes focused and absolutely steady. "Don't move," he said. "I'm going to dig you out. My baby. I know. We're going to protect your baby. Breathe slowly. Conserve heat." He dropped to his knees and began digging with his bare hands. The snow was like cement now. Each handful took effort. Each handful cost him something. She watched his fingers turn red. Then white. "Why are you doing this?" Her voice was fading. Consciousness edging away at the corners. "Because it's the right thing to do." He didn't look up. His hands kept moving. "I know who your husband is," he added quietly. "That's not who you are." The irony was not lost on her, even now, even half frozen and half conscious. The man Garrett had called ruthless, unethical, dangerous. The man Garrett had destroyed through his wife. That man was bleeding for her. Sacrificing his fingers for her. Risking his life for a stranger married to his worst enemy. "Almost there," Weston said. "Stay with me. Stay awake." She tried. She really tried. "The baby," she whispered. "Promise me, if I don't, promise me you'll save the baby. You're both going to make it. I'm not leaving either of you." He found her trapped leg. Felt the angle. One wrong move could cause more damage. He looked at her, and his expression was steady, the look of someone who has already decided. "This is going to hurt. I'm sorry." He pulled. The pain was blinding. White hot against the cold. She felt the break, felt the wrongness of the angle, but she was free. She was free. "I've got you," Weston said, lifting her with arms that should have been shaking but weren't. "Both of you. I've got you." Stopwatch 3:30 to 6 o'clock by the fireplace, 2 strangers, 2 wounds. The lodge lobby was still standing. Barely. But the great stone fireplace still burned, as if it had decided, long before any of this, that it would not be extinguished. Survivors huddled around it. Some crying. Some silent. All in shock. Weston set her down near the warmth. A first aid kit appeared. Blankets. Warm water. Ruth, the silver-haired manager, had transformed into something extraordinary, a general, commanding her staff through the wreckage with the authority of someone who had decided panic was not an option today. Weston sat beside her, his hands wrapped in white gauze already bleeding through at the fingertips. "How bad?" Colleen asked. "Bad enough. But they'll heal. You could lose them." Those fingers. Fingers can be replaced. Lives can't. She looked at him then. Really looked. Saw the exhaustion beneath the calm. The grief that never fully leaves a person, the kind that settles into the eyes and stays. Your wife, she said. Catherine. His expression flickered. Pain, quickly controlled. You know about her. I read Garrett's emails. I know what he did. What he really did. Her voice broke. I'm so sorry. I swear I didn't know. I didn't know any of it. Weston was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled beside them. Outside, the wind still moved like something alive. Catherine was 7 months pregnant, he said finally. Just like you are now. She was excited. Scared. Overwhelmed. All the things. What happened? Your husband happened. No bitterness. Just facts. He found out about her history, postpartum depression after our first pregnancy. Something we had recovered from together. Something private. He leaked it. More than leaked it, he framed it. Made it seem like she was unstable. Implied I was hiding a dangerous wife from investors. He swallowed. The headlines were brutal. Catherine saw all of them. Every comment. Every person picking apart her private pain for sport. The stress triggered early labor. He stopped. Started again. The doctors said it was complications. Technical, medical complications. But I know what really killed her. Shame. Fear. The feeling that her deepest secret had been stolen and used as a weapon. I'm so sorry, Colleen said. I benefited from it. I was married to him while he did these things. You didn't do this. My daughter will share his DNA. Carry his name. Children are not their parents, Weston said. His voice was firm. My daughter is not defined by the tragedy of her birth. Yours will not be defined by her father's sins. They sat together in silence after that. Two people who had both lost something to the same man. Finding, without planning to, a strange and fragile kind of solidarity in the warmth. The helicopter arrived 40 minutes later. Not 20, as promised. Everything was worse than expected. Everything always is. As they carried her out on the stretcher, Colleen saw Weston one last time. He stood in the lodge doorway, his bandaged hands at his sides, his face quiet. Thank you, she called out. For everything. He nodded once. Simple. Final. Take care of your daughter, he said. That's all the thanks I need. The hospital room was white and quiet and smelled of antiseptic. The surgery was successful. The bones would heal. The baby, strong, stubborn, just like her mother, was stable. And Colleen lay in the bed and did what she had been too afraid to do for years. She thought clearly. She went back through every memory she had of her marriage. Their first date, she had thought, this is too good to be true. Their engagement, she had thought, this feels like his wedding, not ours. The late nights he couldn't explain. The phone calls he took in other rooms. The way he sometimes looked at her like she was a presentation. Every doubt she had buried under gratitude. Every instinct she had dismissed as insecurity. I was so stupid, she thought. The signs were all there. I just didn't want to see them. Darcy arrived that afternoon, her best friend since college, the one person who had never liked Garrett, the one person who had never said I told you so. She didn't say it now either. She just took Colleen's hand and sat. I knew something was wrong, Darcy finally said. I should have told you. Why didn't you? Because you seemed happy. And I was afraid of being wrong. Afraid of destroying your marriage over a suspicion. But you weren't wrong. No. I wasn't. I'm sorry, Colleen. I should have been braver. Colleen thought about that word. Brave. She had been thinking about it since the moment she clawed herself through the snow. What are you going to do? Darcy asked. Destroy him, Colleen answered. A pause. That's not what I expected you to say. I know. But this isn't about revenge. Then what is it about? Colleen thought about Catherine Caldwell, a woman she had never met, a woman who died because Garrett needed to win a contract. A woman whose daughter would grow up without a mother. She thought about Brinley Vance, probably being manipulated the same way Colleen had been manipulated. She thought about every employee at Ashford Tech, every investor, every person whose livelihood depended on a man who would sacrifice anyone for his ambitions. It's about the truth, she said. Everyone deserves to know who Garrett really is. Not for revenge. For protection. So he can't hurt anyone else the way he's hurt us. How do we start? There's something I haven't told you yet. She told Darcy about Garrett's last phone call. The threats. The comparison to Catherine Caldwell. The promise to destroy her in court. Darcy went pale. He said he'd do to you what he did to her. His exact words. That's not just a threat. That's an admission. I know. And I recorded it. Darcy stared. My phone has automatic call recording for important contacts. Garrett insisted I set it up years ago. Something about legal protection for business calls. A grim, quiet smile crossed Colleen's face. I don't think he ever imagined I'd use it against him. 3 days after the avalanche, Garrett appeared at the hospital. She heard him before she saw him, his voice in the hallway, warm and concerned, performing the loving husband for anyone nearby. She could hear a nurse responding. Could almost see him touching her arm, making eye contact in the way he did, making everyone feel seen. He entered with roses, her favorite. He had never listened when she told him she didn't actually like roses. He never listened to anything that wasn't useful to him. Colleen, thank God. He moved toward her, arms open. The embrace of a loving husband. She held up her hand. Palm out. A wall between them. Don't. He stopped. The performance faltered, just for a second. Then recovered. Honey, I know you're upset. But can we please discuss this privately? There are cameras everywhere. You're right, she said calmly. There are cameras everywhere. So let's make sure they capture the truth. The news crew in the hallway, the Ridgecrest Lodge avalanche was still making headlines. 17 dead. Dozens injured. And among the survivors, the pregnant wife of tech millionaire Garrett Ashford, rescued by his billionaire rival. The story had written itself. You were in Aspen. Her voice was clear. Steady. The voice of a woman who had clawed herself out of the snow and decided she was done being buried. With Brinley Vance. Hotel room 417. The room you originally booked for her, for your anniversary. Your real anniversary. The one you've been celebrating for 18 months while I was busy being your wife. The color drained from Garrett's face. I told you to leave me after the baby came. I have the emails. And I have the phone call, the one where you told me you'd do to me what you did to Catherine Caldwell. Only worse. Garrett looked at the cameras. Looked at the nurses gathering in the doorway. Looked at his wife, pale, bandaged, unbroken, and understood that everything he had built was about to come down. Not like an avalanche. Faster. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Colleen said quietly. I don't think I ever really was. I think I was just afraid of being wrong about you. Afraid of losing the life I thought we had. She placed her hand on her belly. The baby stirred. But she taught me something, this daughter of mine. She taught me that some things are worth fighting for, and some things are worth letting go. She looked at her husband one final time. You're one of the things I'm letting go. Stopwatch epilogue, 1 year later. Colleen Ashford named her daughter Elena, after no one in particular, just a name that sounded like the kind of woman she hoped her daughter would grow up to be. Strong. Clear-eyed. Unafraid. Elena took her first steps at 11 months, in a sunlit apartment that smelled of coffee and fresh flowers. Colleen's apartment, her name on the lease, her furniture, her life. Garrett's case was referred to federal investigators. The leaked medical records of Catherine Caldwell. The targeted character assassination. The 18 months of corporate misconduct. The evidence was more than enough to begin. Weston Caldwell testified willingly. He showed up to the deposition in a dark suit, his 2 frost-damaged fingers still slightly stiff, and answered every question with the same quiet precision he had used to dig Colleen out of the snow. They met for coffee once, 3 months after the avalanche. A small cafe, neutral ground. Their daughters, Colleen's Elena, Weston's Emma, slept in their strollers side by side. They didn't talk about Garrett. They talked about sleep deprivation and the strange wonder of watching a child discover the world for the first time. At the end of the hour, Weston paid for the coffee. Colleen let him. As they stood to leave, he said something that stayed with her for a long time afterward. The thing about avalanches, he said, pulling on his coat, is that they don't just destroy. They clear. They take away everything that was already unstable. He looked at her, calm, steady, the way he had looked at her in the snow. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is also the beginning of the one you were always supposed to have. Colleen didn't answer. But she smiled. And that was enough. You stayed until the end. That means something. Because this story of a woman buried alive while her husband celebrated their anniversary in another city with another woman, this story isn't really about survival. It isn't really about avalanches or betrayal or even revenge. It's about something quieter. Something most of us have experienced in some form. It's about the stories we tell ourselves when the truth is too painful to look at directly. Colleen Ashford knew. She knew on some level, in the way all of us know, deep beneath the hoping and the excusing and the desperate performing of happiness, that something was wrong. She felt it in the late-night phone calls. She felt it in the empty suite on her anniversary. She felt it in the way her husband's eyes sometimes moved across her face like she was a problem to be solved. She knew. And she chose not to know. Because the alternative was a life that looked nothing like the one she had promised herself. We all do this. We make excuses for people who don't deserve them. We protect illusions because the truth is terrifying. We mistake endurance for love. We call it loyalty when sometimes it's just fear wearing a very convincing disguise. And Weston Caldwell, the so-called ruthless billionaire, the man Garrett had spent years painting as the villain of his own story, he dug her out of the snow with his bare hands. He lost 2 fingers. He didn't hesitate. Because the measure of a person's character is not what they do when it's easy. It's what they do when it costs them something. Garrett had money, power, connections, charm. He had all the things we're told make someone worth keeping. Weston had something rarer. He had integrity. And in the end, integrity is the only thing that matters when everything else has been buried. The life lessons of this story. Trust your instincts. That quiet voice in the back of your mind, the one you keep overriding with logic and hope, it is almost never wrong. Colleen knew. She had always known. Learning to listen to yourself before the world forces you to is one of the most important things you will ever do. Silence is not kindness. Darcy loved Colleen enough not to push. But sometimes the most loving thing we can do for the people we care about is to tell them the hard truth, even when they aren't ready to hear it. Silence that protects an illusion can cost more than the discomfort of honesty. Character is revealed in crisis, not comfort. Anyone can be charming when there's nothing at stake. The person who shows up when it costs them, who digs through cement snow with bare hands, who testifies in a deposition they have every reason to avoid, that is who someone truly is. You are not responsible for what was done to you. But you are responsible for what you do next. Colleen didn't choose the avalanche. She didn't choose a husband who was a monster. But she chose, from the moment she clawed toward the surface, to survive. To fight. To become someone new. Sometimes the worst moment of your life is clearing space for something better. The avalanche didn't just destroy. It revealed. It showed Colleen who her husband really was. It showed her what real courage looks like. It showed her that she was stronger than she had ever needed to be before, because she had never needed to be. Love should never ask you to disappear. If you find yourself making yourself smaller, quieter, less certain, less present, so someone else can feel bigger, that is not love. That is management. You deserve someone who makes the room feel larger when you walk into it, not smaller. If this story moved you, if you saw yourself in Colleen, or in Darcy, or even in the long shadow cast by Weston Caldwell's grief, then I want you to know something. You are not alone in the snow. There are people around you who would dig with bare hands. Who would carry you to warmth. Who would sit beside you in the lobby while the fire burns and not ask you to be anything other than what you are right now. You just have to let them. Channel call to action. If this story reached something inside you, if it made you feel seen, or understood, or reminded of someone you love, please share it. Pass it to the person who needs to hear it tonight. You never know whose snow it might melt through. Subscribe to this channel. Every week, we bring you stories like this one, true in spirit, powerful in feeling, told with the care they deserve. Stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Stories about survival and love and the moments that change everything. And leave a comment below. Tell me, which part of Colleen's story stayed with you? Was it the moment in the snow? The emails? The recording? Or was it what Weston said at the end, about avalanches, and clearing? Whatever it was, I want to know. Because this channel is not just a place for stories. It's a place for the conversations that stories make possible. I'll see you in the next one. Short life lesson. The woman who was buried in the snow discovered something that none of Garrett's money could buy and none of his threats could take away, the knowledge of her own worth. She had always been enough. She had just been surrounded by someone who needed her not to know that.